Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Renovation and Outdoor Living Show. This, Friday the 14th of August. And, well, it's been a funny old time, certainly here in New Zealand, particularly in Auckland, where we seem to be reverting back into this. Hey, nice to see you, Julia. You're the first to say hello straight up, which is awesome, because I'm hoping lots and lots of people are going to be watching today, given the fact we're all back in our homes inside one of these COVID lockdowns. Hi, Kat. Nice to see you as well. A bit of an international flavour as well today. I'll get to that very shortly. A quick recap of Tuesday, though, because we had a fascinating chat on Tuesday with he'd be one of New Zealand's most knowledgeable garden experts, and certainly about pest control. Bill Brett, an award-winning legend and author of all things gardening, including the Garden Pest and Disease Control Essential New Zealand Guide. So he told us how to identify certain pest problems, what to do about them, and how to avoid them in the first place. So if there's anything you want to know about pests in the garden, then have a look back on Tuesday's show, which you can find on YouTube or Facebook, or even just go and get Bill's book, The Garden Pest and Disease Control Essential New Zealand Guide. Then we spoke to Alex Wong, who's one of the Refresh franchise owners. He's from Refresh Manukau in South Auckland. And we were talking to him all about those unexpected surprises when renovating. Those problems you find when you rip the jib up, or rip the jib off the wall, or when you rip the lino up. And they were mainly mold, water damage, or maybe DIY botch-ups from years gone by. His main message was you never fail to plan. Oh, you should never fail to plan. And that also includes planning for the unexpected. Even if you find stuff you didn't think you'd find, there is a way that you can actually plan for that. So as I mentioned, today we've got an international flavour. Both guests coming from overseas, from outside New Zealand. Well, we're allowed to go outside our living rooms, albeit only online at the moment. And hi, Jane. Nice to see you. Thanks for tuning in. And we're looking today at what makes a creative space. This is really timely, given the fact we're back into lockdown in Auckland, certainly, and partial lockdown in the rest of New Zealand. That many of our audience in obviously Victoria, Australia, are still in lockdown in the US and the UK. Well, I don't think anyone really knows what's happening over there, but you'll figure it out. What I do know is that if you're up and you're watching right now, it's you're not too fussed about whether you're locked down or all. Now Chris is just tuned in, saying hello all. Interesting. I will wait patiently for your draw today. Okay, so Chris, you're after the draw for this. I presume for the Cry Cup maker, which is a cool prize. We'll give it away at the end. So yeah, hang in there, Chrissy, and we'll let you know whether you've won it or not. So what makes a creative space? Now, chances are that if you're into renovations, you'll have heard of Houzz. If you're not, then you're watching the show because you want to be into renovations. So this will be a timely introduction to Houzz. So basically, Houzz is, and you probably are familiar with the brand. It's the leading platform for home renovation and design. It gives us basically everything we need to improve our homes from start to finish. Your design inspiration, research, where to get advice, even who to hire to help. And Tony Bean, well, he's basically the guy who runs it in this part of the world. He's the Australia and New Zealand managing director. His background is in IT. He's a lover of disruptive tech, and particularly given the positive impact it can have on our lives. And Tony, I'm hoping we can join you from Sydney. Really good to see you, mate. Houzz?
Yeah, cheers.
It's a really strong brand, isn't it? Because and it's an international brand as well.
Yeah, so we started out in the US. Husband and wife went through a challenging renovation, and like so much of technology, they decided to do something about it. So they built this little side project with family and friends, parents of kids at school. And I guess the main problem that they had was when you go on a renovation or a build, as a consumer, there's so much you don't know, right? And so what style do I like? And then ultimately, who can do that work? So as we've sort of grown, it's really how do we facilitate that connection between homeowners and professionals and making that whole process a lot easier.
And actually, you've also grown in your appeal to who you're aiming at, because you also do aim at, it's not just to help homeowners connect with professionals, it's the other way around as well now.
Yeah, absolutely. So professionals are so important to us, right? So what we offer them is a way to get the right type of homeowner connecting with them, because what so many professionals were challenged with, you used to get a lot of tire kickers who want the world but don't know what you do, don't know what to pay. So it sort of organically grew. We had all these homeowners looking for professionals. We had a bunch of professionals looking for homeowners. We would connect them together through sort of local marketing solutions. And as we've evolved, we now offer like a whole business solution to that professional community. So all by providing an amazing client experience, getting exposure, closing leads, managing their business. It's really successful.
So anyone in the space, whoops, I've switched my printer on. It's probably going to make loads of whirring noises now. Sorry if you can pick it up. So you shouldn't lean on anything when you're in your home office in this tiny little one, and this is what we want to talk a wee bit about, because we're talking about creative spaces. Okay, I mean, we're not talking about where the kids do their art or where the piano sits. What do we mean by creative spaces?
Well, it's a bit of a term. You can make of it what you will, right? But it's this whole notion of how do we foster these environments that breed creativity. And that might be mental, physical, emotional capacity. So any room is capable of being used creatively, but specifically at the moment where so much is indoors, we're so restricted on how we can go out, it's really important that we find these little areas of outlet, be it, physically, creatively, or even just from a mental relaxation and an outlet, and how we can bring that to life.
So let's talk about the COVID-19 era. This is important because we so often talk on the show about how things have changed. It's one of the reasons why we decided to do this show. This is when lockdown started back in March. We decided we'd get into this because our creative spaces have changed, the way we're using them.
Yeah, like you say, the world has changed, right? And within that, the home has changed. And I think one of the first things I've noticed, I'm sitting here at a table, you're in your room there, your spaces have to work so much more in so many different environments. So what we found is the functionality of a room needs to be more flexible to be able to drive more. So your kitchen table, for example, used to be the kitchen table, but now it might be where your kids study, right? My lounge room used to be where my dog runs around, but now it's where I exercise. So we have to be a lot smarter about how we set these spaces up to be more flexible and adaptable to what's going on around us.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, our house needs a good renovation, and one of the things about it is there's the dining room, there's the study, there's the living area, there's the formal room, and it doesn't really work, which is why we're going to have a lot of fun when we do get around to it. But this isn't the first time, though, we've adapted our homes because of a disease.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's beautiful about working in this industry for me is that interplay of wider society versus design, art, ideas. So they all influence one another. So you think back to, start of the 20th century, a whole bunch of modernism in terms of architecture came out of tuberculosis. And we had these big dark spaces, really heavy veloured couches, long drapery, lots of clutter. And what people wanted was more clarity, more breadth, bigger windows, minimalist lines and spaces. So that sort of influence is quite interesting in terms of seeing the shift. Now, one thing with COVID in particular, what we're seeing, and this is still early days, right, is people's desire from having these beautiful open plan, easy flowing environments to actually wanting these little sanctuaries. Yeah. And maybe the house gets set up for a little bit more disconnection than what we previously had, because as much as I love my wife, I don't need to see her 24/7, right? And so how do I get my little bit of me time in environments that can actually be physically segmented and broken up?
Here's the good news for you, Tony. And I'll tell you, having been married for over 20 years, they still always know where you are, okay, mate? However, yourself. So we've talked about this idea of having multifunctional spaces, where we work, the kitchen area. We've talked about exercising maybe in the home as well. And these are macro trends, aren't they? What other sort of macro trends for creative spaces are you seeing?
Yeah, so like a big part of it is that multifunctionality, right? How do I get more out of the same environment? So for kitchens, what we will see sometimes is people have this notion of like an unkitchen in a way. So a kitchen that's less like this clinical open cooking space, and something that will have joinery that hides all the different elements. God forbid I show where my fridge is, but something that can sort of double up and make it a little bit more acceptable and shifting in terms of what it was. We see a lot more textures and tonality, a little bit more creativity in the kitchen. And then also a big part of it is, if I'm around here, how do I functionally utilize every single space? So like a hallway, little study nooks, opportunities to drive more, so much custom joinery for storage, but also in terms of functionality. One of the things for me, obviously this time has been crazy and had so much of a negative impact, but one of the positives to take is also that slight shift in perspective. And I look at my life, and so much of it is always about looking out and seeking experiences, opportunities, not being satisfied with where I'm at, and being literally forced to stay at home, we start reflecting in a bit more, right? So if I'm not going on the big European holiday chasing these dreams and experiences, if I'm not going out spending as much money on clothes, food, whatever, with my family and my environment, that's what actually matters. How can I create different elements that are more for me, right? How can I build a beautiful bookshelf, custom wine cellar? That means a lot to me. And those little intricacies, and we are seeing that sort of evolve and that sort of personal touch come up because it's more important if you're spending more time there.
It's you just mentioned wine cellars. We're going to be talking to someone in the UK about wine cellars very shortly, actually. So, but it also goes beyond the spaces and the practicability of the spaces, isn't it? It's also about what we're using to build. I don't know, to build your bookshelves. It's also about. I think people are so aware about the 21st century needs on efficiencies and sustainability.
Absolutely. And this is a trend we've seen in our data for the last few years. So we started House in Australia, New Zealand 6.5 years ago, actually 7 years ago almost. And people have been much more aware about the environment, the impact, sustainability, but also now they've got the capacity to do something about it. So recyclable materials, a lot of innovation in terms of low VOC compounds, people being much more conscious about energy efficiency and actually building that into their design. This is a beautiful example of another trend we see, which is particularly Australia, New Zealand, right? It's this Antipodean notion of indoor-outdoor. And the amount we collectively spend on our landscaping is significantly higher than any other region in the world. And part of it's climate, part of it's space, but a lot of it's also this like shared Aussie Kiwi. It's like this relaxed hospitality, couple of beers, barbecue in the background, and your external space becomes an additional living and entertaining area. And that's been fostered by, look, improvements in the actual quality of the furniture, the technology you can do it. And specifically at the moment, when you're so cooped in and you can't go out much, if you've got that little window or door into an outdoor space, it's literally a breath of fresh air. And it makes so much of a difference in terms of what we're seeing people focusing on.
Yeah, and so that's just talking about the slightly bigger picture trend wise, but there's actually the micro trends as well, isn't there? And this is I mean, what we're talking about is, I mean, you mentioned the types of materials we're using, but tell us also about, I mean, how much we're focusing on the detail around us as we change our creative spaces in our homes.
Yeah, so again, so much of it's this integration of technology and what's possible, right? So practically, even before COVID, we saw these big sort of 2020 trends about organic, soothing color tones, natural palettes, also more earthy, grounded materials, right? So we're seeing a lot more sort of homewares, recycled materials, people picking and choosing little trinkets and intricacies to really sort of have this grounded space. One thing's interesting in bathrooms in particular, this notion of bathroom as sanctuary. It used to be this very clinical hospital space. Now it's like, oh my God, I'll close the door and actually have 5 minutes without the kids screaming. And so it's like that me time in there. One thing particularly at the moment is a sort of multi-sensory impact, right? I hear my dog about to bark in the background. So if you hear a yelp, that's her. Is this notion of lighting and sound. And with smart technology and Internet of Things, in these creative spaces, you can do so much more than you previously could have. There she goes. So you could do so much more than you previously could have, right? And if you think about sound design used to be so functional and static and very technical. Now sound is easy to use, and I can carve out different spaces in terms of different living rooms with different sounds playing at the same time, and lighting with smart technology controllable by the phone. I can change the mood of how I feel and how I'm using my space. And we're seeing that a lot in terms of micro and quite immediate right at the moment.
Amazing. And I mean, the problem here, Tony, is that we're, if we talked about trends, we could go on forever. I mean, it sort of gives us a bit of a glimpse as to the sort of the world which House can open up for us as well. Both, as you say, where we started this conversation, both not just for the consumer and getting ideas, but also for the professional looking at what you've observing people want. So really interesting stuff. Tony, thank you very much for giving us a bit of time this afternoon. Really appreciate that. I hope you're all well in Sydney. I think you guys are doing pretty well over there. And we just look forward to being able to, I don't know, just visit.
Yeah, absolutely. Just play some rugby again, actually. But also, I did want to wish all the best to everyone in New Zealand. We've got so much empathy and love and care for you guys. And I fully appreciate how tough the last couple of days in particular have been. So wishing you guys all the very best. And thanks so much for having us on, Rod.
See how close we are as cousins when times are tough. But great to see you. Thanks for giving us some time there.
Absolute pleasure. Cheers, guys. Thanks.
So really interesting stuff from Tony. Thank you for all your comments. I mean, there was some really cool, a lot of you have joined online today, which is great. Maybe it's because I mentioned a wine cellar and half of you have gone, yep, Friday afternoon, let's just talk about wine, which we will do very shortly. But this was an interesting one. Jen said, hey, you have to also think about being adaptable for renters as well, so maybe not so many fixtures that are permanent. That's a really good point. Lisa loves the idea of, the ideas on opening up the small spaces without huge expense. That's the sort of thing which you can probably get from House, or if you get onto your local refresh team, they've got their designers in there as well. So that's the sort of stuff which they're all paying attention to now. How we can best utilize our spaces, our creative spaces, and still not have it cost us a fortune. Julia, nice to see you. Yeah, you just want to talk about wine. And Jodie, nice to see you as well. And Lisa and Jen, really good to see you. Thanks. And Kat. Jodie's talking about wine as well. So let's talk about wine, okay? Because the one space that Tony mentioned it, and at the moment that this would be part of it because we're stuck a lot of the time indoors or at home. The bars may be closed. So maybe we are thinking more about a wine cellar. Hey, thanks, Holly. That's a nice comment. Thanks for a great show. Really enjoying it. Nice being able to catch it since we're home in Auckland. So I wondered where you've been. Let us know. Drop us a line and let us know. But anyway, welcome back to Auckland, where you may well be dreaming of this next thing, the wine cellar. Look, it probably is an unnecessary luxury to many of us, most of us. So we decided that we would go to our luxury consultant. Now, we've spoken to Kelly before. Now, Kelly Marcher runs Refresh Renovations in Surrey. Now, if you know the UK, you'll know that Surrey, it's just outside London. It's the commuter belt. It's the stockbroker belt, as they used to call it. So there's a lot of wealth. And Kelly's talked to us in the past about, luxury bathrooms. And she's shown us some pretty incredible projects. So we thought we'd have a chat with her to ask her about what people ask for when they really love their wine. This is something which people are going to be thinking more and more about as we spend more and more time looking in our own homes. Given that it's 3 a.m. in the UK, or 3:20 right now, we thought we'd actually speak to her a little earlier. So I had a chat with her on the phone, just yesterday, about the wine cellars and the possibilities. So, Kelly, thanks for joining us this afternoon from the UK. Now, last time we spoke, you explained you do a lot of high-end renovation projects. Given the area where you are in the UK, that's hardly surprising. How often, though, are you actually asked to consider wine storage specifically when you're working on a kitchen?
Not that often. Let's face it, most people don't keep their wine long enough to store it. But yeah, there are some wine connoisseurs out there that store wine and therefore want it stored correctly. So,
or is it a case that people come to you, you've finished the project almost, and or you're just doing the final install or something, and suddenly they're saying, "Oh, actually, we need somewhere for the wine." And I'm not talking about somewhere like this because this is crazy. But seriously, and we'll talk about this picture in a minute. But do people suddenly go, "Oh, we forgot about the wine," but it's something that, it's that sort of added bit of luxury, particularly given the fact, as I mentioned, you're in Surrey in the UK.
I'd like to think I don't let them forget about the wine. So if they're having a kitchen or we're doing anything with a basement or any sort of room I think is appropriate and I know that they do drink wine, then I will offer that as part of the deal. Because essentially I wouldn't want them to think of it as an afterthought. It's really difficult if it's an afterthought, to be honest.
You mentioned basement just then, because does that mean that still it's a case that the wine cellar has to be in the basement?
No, it doesn't have to be in the basement. It just made sense. There's a lot of very old properties in the UK that had basements already, and it makes sense because they are dark already and they tend to be cooler than the rest of the house. So that just makes sense, really.
But you wouldn't go so far as to suggest excavating a cellar area for that. It's just about making use of the space because it's there.
It's making use of the space for the majority of people. If someone had, you know, the means to build a basement just for wine, then of course we wouldn't say no. Because
I would live in that room. That's incredible.
That is beautiful, isn't it?
So that's a classic example of what we're talking about: how to make use of a space downstairs and turn it into an extraordinary looking room. So when I look at this, I'm thinking to myself that, and thinking about basements generally, that this is about, it's ideal because you mentioned the temperature. So what are we talking about? How should we store wines?
So every wine is different, but let's face it, the majority of people in this world can't store wines at different temperatures. So what I would say is wine should be stored between 11 and 14 degrees Celsius. And, you know, you can go up to 24, but that's pushing it a bit, which means other rooms in the house aren't necessarily appropriate because most of us live at sort of between 18 and 21 degrees.
And of course, the big problem is unless you do something proper, like those wine cellars, the temperature is going to change during the day.
Yeah, if they're not properly insulated, then it's going to change. If you're really thinking about a wine cellar, you know, in its entirety to keep wine for a long period of time, you should really be thinking about climate control, not just air conditioning, not just keeping the temperature at 14 degrees. But actually what the moisture is as well. That's the best way to think of it. And obviously that is quite expensive. So it's not for everybody. And it's only really the wine connoisseurs that should really be thinking in that way.
Whereas something like this picture is just a classic good example of clever wine storage. I mean, that's
exactly.
really,
that's what most people, you know, want out of wine storage, you know, because they're not intending to keep it that long. They're not maybe investing in bottles that they will keep for a long period of time.
So why? And we've seen it here. We know this traditionally. Why are wines stored on their side? Apart from the fact it's easier to store them.
Well, I mentioned sort of the climate control and moisture in the air. The reason they're stored on their side is so that the cork stays moist. So if the cork is moist, it's less likely to shrink. And if it's, you know, if it shrinks, then it can let air in, and then the wine will oxidize. And that's when you get corked wines.
This person likes this particular wine,
yeah.
or it's just all about the style and the look, which actually is actually quite a good thing to talk about, because you know, it's not ideal to store wine in your kitchen or your dining room, maybe, unless you're using it as a feature like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to have a nice wine rack in your kitchen for aesthetics. As I said, that's if you're going to be drinking it, you know, within a few months or weeks or even days, but not if you're looking to store wine for years, because the temperature, the light, the UV light can affect wine and age it prematurely, just like humans. So, you know, that's not where you store wine if you're serious about keeping wine forever. But by all means, you know, we can and have stored or made beautiful wine racks for people within their kitchens.
So that you'll do that sort of bespoke to the space, will you sometimes?
Oh, of course. And actually, if you have a kitchen that a cupboard doesn't quite meet the end, a standard size kitchen, we can easily fit in wine racks to fill in spaces.
It's actually a good idea, that, isn't it? It's a great idea for using a little corner or nook of a renovation which serves no other purpose. So this one's an interesting one because, you know, we're talking about the thermostat control. This on the left, of course, there's your solution. You just put in a wine fridge. Yeah,
there's some really good value wine fridges out there, and they will store to more than one temperature. So if you want to keep your white and your reds stored well, then they are really good. I think that one probably stores at least, you know, 70 bottles of wine, I'd guess.
Yeah,
maybe
so
more.
Probably neither you nor I would ever actually fill that, but it looks great. So anyway. we started this. Oh, so this is a good example of probably a very cost-effective way of giving yourself some sort of wine cellar. But we started by looking at that purpose-built, incredible wine room, which brings up the question of how much people are going to drop on a wine cellar.
Well, it depends what you've already got in place. So if you've already got a basement that's tanked, i.e. waterproofed, and you've already got a way down to that cellar, then it's the carpentry and the flooring. But if we have to excavate, if we have to waterproof, if we then need to do bespoke carpentry and staircases, it can be quite hefty. We can do, there is something called a spiral staircase cellar, which is quite cool, which is somewhere in between a full-on cellar that you can, you have a hatch in any room you like, which is essentially a spiral staircase with the wine around the spiral staircase, and it is, it's temperature and climate controlled in there. So there are ways of doing it without excavating the whole house and the foundations. But yes, anything
that's very cool.
Yeah, you asked about prices. They start at around the £30,000 mark in the UK. The little wine cellars that go around the staircase. But we're talking up to hundreds of thousands, because excavating is traditionally 4 times as expensive as building on top of land.
Yeah, so it's definitely a very luxury. Okay, final thing I want to ask you about is the big no-nos. When it comes to keeping what do you see people doing which makes you wince as a wine lover when you see people keeping wine in the house?
Freezing their wine, that's a really bad one. That completely deteriorates the wine straight away. I'm not saying I haven't done it, but it's really frowned upon in the wine community. And not
you're talking about the emergency chilling of a bottle because you haven't got any in the fridge, and so you chuck it in the fridge.
It's more of a problem if you forget about it.
Yeah.
Then
your favorite drop?
I recently have got back into Chardonnay. I was very fond of a New Zealand tipple of Sauvignon Blanc, but I've recently reinvigorated myself with Chardonnays because I don't know, they had a bit of a bad rap in the 90s of being over oaked, but they've come back really beautiful and rounded and.
Well, I'm very disappointed you didn't say elderflower or something else nice and British, but it's good to know that you're drinking the New World wines over in the UK. Look, Kelly, really good to have a chat with you about something. It's quite niche, obviously. It's a bit of an investment, but there is no doubt. And you would say it was a growing market? Do you think people are more and more keen on this as part of that?
I think this is a time in people's lives where, especially they can't get out at the moment, they are investing and trying to enjoy what they've got at home more. So one, they're trapped at home a little bit more, especially in the UK still, and they want to make the best of their homes, but also they want to enjoy what they're drinking a little bit more because they're not getting out and about to socialise. So they're spending less on socialising, more on refined experiences at home.
That's so interesting, isn't it? Because this is the theme we're hearing time and time again right now, globally. The investment people are making in their homes to improve their homes, and add to that also adapt their homes for the different lifestyles they've got, i.e. being at home a lot more, is having a massive impact on the renovation market, isn't it? And this is a small but specific example of that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of home offices, a lot more extending the homes for relaxation purposes,
and drinking a lot more wine.
And wine cellars.
Kelly, thanks so much for giving us some time. I appreciate it. I know it's evening where you are, and because it's the morning over here, although we're playing this afternoon. But really good to have another chat with you, and I look forward to talking to you about the next exciting instalment from deepest Surrey in the UK. You are very welcome, Morgan. Take care. You too. So that is Kelly Moucher there from Refresh Renovations in Surrey. Oh, I've got a bit of feedback suddenly appeared, doesn't it? So that's great. Thank you for your comments. Really good to see you. You can't hear the weird feedback, but so Kat, Sam, you're after wine cellars. Oh no, Kat, you've got to do your bathroom first. Sorry about that. Sam, actually, no, you're drinking it before you could store it. That's all. But and you mentioned the wine fridge. Yeah, Lisa, you mentioned the wine fridge. And we saw the wine fridge come up. But yeah, that's possibly sort of my what I've looked as well. And Selena, yep, trying to get a wine rack built in there. Jane, cider rack. We'll do cider rooms next week. Hey, there's Selena's comments, some beautiful wine racks. Jane wants to get a cider rack. I don't even know if that's the thing. Just get a barrel, put it in the middle of the room, and make a hole in it, and put a tap in it. Anyway, competition time, because I know a couple of you have tuned in to see if you won the Cry Cup maker. First of all, the veggie bag. We're not giving these away today. These are the veggie bags made by VeggiePod New Zealand. We've got 5 of these to give away. Remember, this is the product which won the product of the year this year at the Chelsea Flower Garden Show, or even the Chelsea Flower Show, garden product of the year at the Chelsea Flower Show. $40 each, and to win one of those, you need to like our page and tell us when and where VeggiePod NZ was established. Go on their website and you'll find out. Remember, it's the NZ one, not the Australian original founder. So, the Cry Cup Maker, smart computer-controlled cutting machine, helps you make professional-looking DIY projects with ease. It's $699 worth. We asked you to tell us what you would use it for, and the winner is Bev Ball. Well done, Bev. Bev told us, wow, my whole family would love having one of these wonderful crafting machines. Emily Louise, Rebecca Ball, and Estelle Wilding, as well as me, would have a ball, pun intended. The whole Ball family are massive crafters. Amazing competition with an awesome prize. So, Bev, there you go. You've got something to get. If you're in lockdown, I don't know where you are, but you've got to let us know where you are so we can organise getting that to you, or where you can pick it up from. And I don't know how much COVID will play a part in it. Anyway, well done, Kat. She said congratulations. Jane, could handle a barrel. Oh, Jane, thanks for another interesting show. No worries. And Selena's going to renovate her kitchen, so maybe she'll get one of those in. So, our top 10 for this Friday. The top 10 super skinny houses. You do not want to build a wine cellar in one of these houses. Trust me. And you probably don't want to be locked up for COVID in one of these houses anyway. Number 10, the world's narrowest house. This is by Jakub Żniezny. This is in Warsaw. That's it. That is literally the house. And that's only number 10. Number 9, Stacking Green. This is in Vietnam. That's cool. That's amazing. You don't get quite the sense of it. It's got 3 doors width. There you go. If you look at the bottom. Number 8, the Imai House. This is in Japan, and that is the entire width of the house. You would have to be so good with your clever storage and clever lighting, as you can see in the pictures there. Both of them, huge reliance on lighting. Number 7, the Slim House extension. This is from London. Let's have a look at this. That is it. And again, it's all about the lighting and light colors and having no clutter. There's nowhere to put your clutter. Number 6 is the Promenade House. Again, this is back to Japan. Absolutely tiny. I don't know where the stairs go. It just drops off the side of the house. You'd have to be slim to live in that one. Number 5, back to Vietnam again. This is the An House, quite similar to the Stacking Green house which we saw. That looks cool interior as well. Number 4, we go to Sweden, to a townhouse in Sweden. Yep, again, I like them. I think they look great. Number 3, I'm not sure where this one is, but it caught our eye because it is just extraordinary. That's somewhere in Eastern Asia by the looks of it. Number 2 of the slimmest houses in the world. This is the Eel's Nest. This is in LA. And again, it's all about the light and the big big picture windows. And number 1, this is what we think is the top super skinny house in the world. And this is in Tokyo. It's called House K. Isn't that incredible? And I think they're all quite cool. And I would live in any of them, but possibly not with the other 4 members of my family at the same time, and the dog, and the wine cellar. Anyway, good luck to them. Great to see you all very, very much today. I know that it is a strange old time for all of you who are watching from New Zealand, or if you're in Victoria and Melbourne. It is a weird old time. We've run well over, but then it is Friday. It's been good to see you. We'll see you all again on Tuesday. Bye-bye.